Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. It's nice to see everyone bright and early here this morning. So I know we're in a silent session and over at Simulcast, but we need your participation this morning. So with that, question for you, the audience. Who here is aspiring to be a solutions architect? Hands? Great, a lot of hands, head nods. Congratulations, you have come to the right session. Now, anyone hiring solutions architects? One hand over there. Welcome, you too have come to the right session. Now, any solutions architects in the room? A few hands, welcome. With that, my name is Noman Batsahan. I'm a manager of solutions architecture with AWS. Besides being a manager, I am a foodie or food fanatic, if you will. I love dining in fine dining restaurants, hole-in-the-wall restaurants, and anything in between. Today, I have with my buddy across the pond.
Yes, from across the pond indeed. Good morning, everybody. My name is Vikas Gupta. Thanks, Noman. I'm also a manager of solution architecture at AWS based in the UK. A little bit about me. When I started learning coding around 25 years ago, I would save my code in a floppy disk. Yes, in a floppy disk, I'm sure you all have used, and I've not seen that in ages. As the technology evolved, I started using CDs, pen drives, and now I use cloud because I think cloud is more reliable and secure for my data. So today, we are going to talk about cloud solution architect role. Shall we begin, Noman?
Of course, thank you. So let's talk about how we're going to spend the next hour. Of course, we're going to talk about who is a solutions architect and what do they do. What personas do you have to embody as a solutions architect? What are the different skills you need to thrive as a solutions architect? And lastly, we will leave you with tools to get you started no matter where you are in the journey. So what is solutions architecture and who is a solutions architect? Before we get there, let's start with architecture. The Open Group Architecture Framework, or TOGAF, defines architecture as the structure of components, their interrelationships, and the principles and guidelines governing their design and evolution over time. Now, this definition is based on ISO, IEC, IEEE. If you go consult your favorite source, all things technology, you will get a different definition. But chances are that definition will perhaps capture the spirit of the three different parts of this definition. So let's take a look. So the first part is the structure of components. This means that each component has a role and a responsibility, and correct assembly is needed to make a whole. The second part, their interrelationships. This means that each component has a web of relationship to other components, and there may or may not be a direct dependency. And of course, the last part, the principles and guidelines governing their design and evolution over time. This means that change is anticipated and expected, and there needs to be a foundational belief system based upon which decisions are made today and onwards. Now, this is architecture, but we're here to talk about solutions architects. So who is a solutions architect? Well, Vikas and I believe that a solutions architect is a person who creates the architectural vision, defines the technical components, and their interrelationships to solve business needs. It's a mouthful, but if you dissect it, at the most foundational level, a solutions architect is a person to solve business needs. Your organization, whether it's for profit or not, have opportunities to progress your mission and risks that hinder your mission. You, as a solutions architect, is going to solve for those opportunities and risks alike. You're going to solve for that end state. But what are your means to that end? Well, number one, it is the creation of the architectural vision. An architectural vision is going to be both inspirational and aspirational. It's going to tell how that technical solution is going to solve for that business need under ideal circumstances. Now, our architectural vision may include decision-making qualities for technical qualities like security, governance, reliability, performance, and so forth. Your second means to the end is the definition of the technical components. Now, as a solutions architect, this definition could be as high level or abstract as just specifying compute, storage, networking, and so forth. Or it could be as concrete as defining the business services, like an address standardization service or tax calculation service. Or it could be as granular as defining what programming languages to use, which libraries to use, and so forth. And of course, the myriads of ways in which you, the solution architect, composes is how you're gonna round up the means to the end. Now, we spent 5 minutes talking about definitions. It's one thing to give a definition. It is a completely different thing to truly understand the nuances and complexities of this role. So Vikas, tell us, what do solutions architects do specifically? And most importantly, why do businesses need a solutions architect?
Thanks, Nomin. I really love the definition of solution architect you just shared. Now, before we talk about why and what of the solution architect role, let's talk about what do businesses want. So what is the most important goal for any organization or any business? It's business growth. In order to grow a business, you need to set clear objectives. And when you set the business objectives, it is about delivering the commitments that you want to grow your organization in a certain way. So business objectives are the measurable targets that organizations want to achieve. So businesses want to make money, they want to retain customers, they want to grow into the new markets, and they want to improve their customer satisfaction, increase their customer satisfaction. So the business need architects and technologists to make the right decision about the technology and frameworks which are the enablers for the business growth. So let's understand it. The organizations need solution architects to create, to coordinate, and to make informed decisions about the transformation. Transformation could be of various types. It could be a technological transformation, which is about making right decisions on your platform, data, infrastructure, and application. There could be process transformation, which is about optimizing, digitizing, and automating your business operations so that you achieve operation efficiency and you lower your cost. You also need solution architects to lower or mitigate your risks. Because solution architects dive deep into your architecture, they understand the risk, and they solve those risks, they mitigate those risks before it starts impacting your business. And lastly, solution architects learn technology, all the concepts, and then they evangelize. They are the best evangelists because they know how that best practices matter and how they can benefit others by teaching the best practices to your product teams and to your business. Now, how do solution architects do that? Let's talk about a mechanism that we in Amazon use. It's called working backwards. How many of you have heard the working backwards mechanism before? Great. So working backwards is Amazon's mechanism for invention to deliver the customer delight. It is how we stay customer obsessed. We work backwards from the moment that the product, service, or experience is in customer's hand. So let's understand about how working backwards work. Working backwards involves 5 stages, and each stage is about asking certain questions and come up with certain set of recommendation. So we start with the listen stage. In the listen stage, it's important to understand your customer. So this stage is about who is your customer, what do you know about them? And the actions we take is we talk to the customer, we interview them, we gather anecdotes, and we analyze their data. So it's important to know your customer first before you work backwards. Then you are in the define stage. In the define stage, you focus on the customer problem. What is the most prevailing customer opportunity? So the data that you analyzed in listen stage, what sort of trends you are getting? What is the most prevailing problem that customer wants you to solve? After that, you are in the invent stage, which is about finding the solution. Why this solution is better than the other alternatives you may have. It is about inventing, and it could be messy, because invention could be messy. It is about experimenting, trying different things. So you focus on the solution. And after that, you refine. Refine is about understanding what is the end-to-end business experience. What is the end-to-end customer experience? What sort of feedback mechanism that you have built? Is your solution really giving the return on investment to the sponsor? And then you test and iterate, which is about showing your product to the customer, getting early feedback, fail fast, but also continue to improve your own product that you want to deliver to your customer. And this working backwards mechanism works for all set of customers. It could be small customer, large customer, it could be internal or external. Working backwards is about delivering the best experience to your customer. And the focus remains on the minimum lovable product. Sometimes minimum viable products is not enough for the long-term relationship with the customer. For example, I wouldn't like to sit in a minimum viable aircraft. It would be too risky. So focus on the minimum lovable product. Now, we talked about why a solution architect is needed. Let's talk about what do they do. So Nomin began this session with a wonderful definition of a solution architect role. So let's dive deep into that. Solution architects have three important things. One is technical capability, second is business acumen, and third is strong advisory skills. So three traits. What they do is they understand the business objectives and turn them into an architecture. They first understand the business problem and the opportunities that we found in the working backwards mechanism. They turn into a technical direction, which is called architecture vision. Your vision is about long-term vision of your architecture, how it's going to fulfill the customer need for a long time. After that, solution architects establish technical capabilities that you need to deliver the design. Well, some of those capabilities you may have, and some you may not yet possess as a team. So the new capabilities come in the form of innovation spikes, research, or some kind of POCs. When you have those capabilities, you start building your design. How do you do that? Think of a big problem. How would you solve that? You first start breaking those problems into small chunks. For example, when you solve a puzzle, you start with sorting those elements into right areas before you actually fit them into the right slots. So this is called decomposition. When you have those small areas, then you start figuring out how that particular solution works for each problem. And then you start integrating it, which is called recomposition. So first you decompose, and then you recompose. That gives you a design. After you have your design, you use it for your system architecture, which includes both your design, but also the living system. And always think of the customer who is going to live in that system every time it is used, which is most important here. You, as a solution architect, you drive the build part. You partner with the product teams, development teams, and you drive those builds. It is important that you work together with those development teams. Your work is not just about architecture, but it's also about working with the build team to actually deliver that product. And finally, you do the inspection. How do you know you are heading into the right direction? That's the inspection that you need to do. Iteration, ask for the feedback, and try to improve your architecture. Now, is there a mechanism that we use for inspection. I would like to know how many of you actually inspect your architecture regularly? Wow, very good. A lot of hands raised. Amazing. Typically, in any architecture inspection, there is an iterative process. It's a life cycle. It's not just one-time job that we do. How do we start? We start with identifying the improvement targets. Now, what are those targets? It is those problems that you have in your architecture or your system. For example, performance, security, reliability, cost, efficiency, or it could be sustainability of your architecture or your workload. You need to identify those problems first, because in day-to-day running of your application, you would know what are your main problems. Then you, as an architect, you evaluate and prioritize those improvement areas. How do you do that? The simple logic is you need to ask questions to yourself and to your business team. What would be the cost of any disruption or any incident if you don't solve that problem? That will help you identify which of these problems are most severe, and then it will help you create a backlog which will give you the priority of those improvements that you want to target first. And as I said, you partner with the build team and the product teams to actually test, build, and validate your solution. It's an iterative process. The most important thing is you need to build those matrices and telemetry in your design, which helps you understand how successful you are. Is your sponsor getting the right investment on the efforts that you spent in this inspection of the architecture? Now, this was all theory, I know, but do we have a tool that actually helps you doing that? Yes, we do. The tool we have in AWS is called AWS Well-Architected framework. I'm sure most of you have seen this. How many of you have actually used that tool? Amazing. This is the tool or the framework at AWS we as a solution architects use, and our partners also use. As you can see, there are 6 pillars across this tool. And if we ask the same question, are you well architected across these 6 pillars, you might answer differently. Every person might answer differently, because this is about the trade-offs that you make when you design your system. And every trade-off is based on your priority. Every person or every organization may have different priorities. So your trade-offs may be different, but the best practices remains same. And this framework is about understanding what are the architectural best practices that you can use, that we have defined after working with thousands and thousands of customers and working with them to build their architectures. So this was all about why and what of the solution architect role. Nauman, shall we talk about different personas?
Yeah. As we all know, there are different paths to solutions architecture. But once you reach there, there are different personas you have to embody as a solutions architect. Now, not only do you have to embody them, but you also have to embrace them. Because if you truly embrace them, you become not just one, but many superheroes. So Vikas and I obviously have the privilege to work with hundreds of solutions architects at AWS and across our customers. Today, we want to share with you 4 personas that are most commonly embodied. So first up, we have the inventor solutions architect. These folks have deep conviction for the vision of the organization. They live in the far distant future because for them, the far distant future is not that far away at all. An inventor essay gets tremendous energy from the idea of what kind of new things can come into this world by the work of their hands. These folks invent a new experience, a new way of working, a new way of living. The needs are not yet articulated, but the inventions was what was needed, like the invention of AWS Lambda or Amazon Kindle. I want to encourage everyone in this room and over at Simulcast to go visit the Builder Fair at Expo Hall. There you will see the amazing inventions from some of these inventor essays. Next up, we have the entrepreneur essay. Now, these folks have deep conviction for the mission of the organization, which is that guiding light. They live in the today and the tomorrow. An entrepreneur essay gets tremendous energy from the idea of making the impossible possible. And they see that challenge as both professional and personal. An entrepreneur essay does not stop when the mission is over. They willingly, without seeking spotlight or attention, share their learnings beyond their immediate team, beyond their organization, through open sourcing, blogging, podcasting, speaking at conventions like re:Invent. Next up, we have the composer essay. A composer essay asks the question, how does this work? And then they ask the question, yeah, but how does it really work? These are the folks that look underneath the hood of the system to understand how it's put together and why it works this way. A composer essay derives order from a chaotic world. A composer essay is excellent at breaking down complex tasks because they know that most technology problems are not new. For a composer essay, the answer is in discovering, repackaging, refolding, and reusing existing patterns. And we have the advocate essay. An advocate essay is the person who empathizes with the users of the system. They empathize with the technologists who have to support the system. And they empathize with the personnel who has to support processes in and around the systems. These are the folks that drive simplicity, efficiency, and effectiveness. Now, I know we've been raising our hands all morning, so we're going to ask you one more time to raise your hand if you saw yourself in one or more of these personas. Okay, keep it up if you saw yourself in 2 or more of these personas. Great. How about 3? And how about 4? Excellent. Now, whether you saw yourself in 1 or more, or all of these personas, every superhero needs superhero skills. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, this is a triangle. We can say this is a green triangle, a big triangle, a small triangle, a triangle that's perhaps centered in the screen. But what's unique about this triangle is it is an equilateral triangle. That means each angle is 60 degrees and all the sides are the same length. Now, in 2022, comedian and author Lily Singh released a book. It's called Be a Triangle. Vikas is holding up the book. Now, Lily, in her book, says, in order to thrive in life, you need to be a triangle, specifically an equilateral triangle. Because an equilateral triangle has a strong foundation. Because if you take this triangle and rotate it on its axis, no matter what side is at the bottom, it still has that strong foundation. So, as a solutions architect, you need technical skills, you need business skills, and you need soft skills. Okay. One thing to note on this is no side or no skill is more important or less important than any other side. All right. In 2019, David Epstein released this book called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. It became #1 on New York Times bestseller. A lot of the media outlets, including Wall Street Journal, National Public Radio, gave it high praise. In fact, Forbes said that it is the most important Business and Parenting Book of the Year. Author, Professor Adam Grant said, in a world that's increasingly obsessed with specialization, Star Science writer David Epstein is here to convince you that the future may belong to generalists. I'm going to give you time to read the rest of his quote. Now, in this book, David Epstein makes two things clear. Number one, early specialization, whether that is in music, in sports, in medicine, in technology, may not necessarily equate to better mastery of that profession. In fact, number two, generalists have come up with some of the brilliant discoveries in medicine. Some of the most brilliant discoveries in medicine came from researchers from completely different field of research. And these are all intentional discoveries, by the way. Some of the best athletes, some of the best musicians, they sampled widely. They played different instruments, they played different sports before specializing, or not specializing at all. Now, this is a typical professional experience, including mine, perhaps yours, Vikas. You start out as an entry-level engineer, you gain some experience, you become a mid-level engineer, you gain some more experience and become a senior engineer and a lead engineer. Now, this linear progression is what society preconditioned us, perhaps in our childhood or early adulthood, or even now. Today, there is a constant pressure to quote-unquote move up. We all know the term, career progression. But what if we married career progression with career playground? What if we sampled widely? What if we had different roles and, like a kid on a playground, we're able to learn new skills, experience different roles, make new friends, and most importantly, have fun while doing it? Now, I understand that we may not have the privilege to change our roles, our companies, and that's okay. Another way to sample widely is to be involved in different parts of your business. Perhaps you can lead the DevOps movement. Perhaps you can lead the cost movement, or even the security movement at your organization. Now, whether you bring the experience on the left or the experience on the right, you are bringing your lived experience. Someone famous at Amazon said, there is no compression algorithm for experience. That was Andy Jassy. It is your experience that's going to allow you to be technically fearless. It is your experience that's going to allow you to go get expertise if necessary. It is your expertise that's going to allow you to appreciate what came before and the lessons they embody. It is your experience that's going to allow you to be flexible while staying true to that architectural vision. So as we sit here in this room in December, year-end review time, next year's goal-setting time, I want to encourage all of you to do self-reflection and then schedule that career conversation, schedule that growth conversation with your leader, and figure out how you're going to get education, experience, and exposure to different technical domains and disciplines. So this is the first side of that equilateral triangle, which is technical skills, technical range. The next skill, or the side, is business skills.
Thanks, Norman. While you were explaining this, I was thinking about my own career in the past. But coming to the business skills, everybody, SAs needs to understand how their business make money. what is their product, who is their customer, who are the competitive, what are the governing laws and frameworks that restrict or enable their product delivery, what are the internal or external constraints. So all these elements solution architects need to know in order to deliver a cohesive architecture, because indirectly or directly these points do matter when you architect your system. On organization structure, solution architects need to understand how their organization is structured, because it is important that SAs navigate through that complexity to get the buy-in and to anticipate the blockers and try to mitigate them in advance. Because one of the reasons why we need an SA is the velocity. So SAs need to understand how they remove those blockers and navigate through the organization structure. On cost, organizations also buy hardware and software, and solution architects need to understand how those purchases impact the revenue. How do cloud computing's pay-as-you-go model affect the revenue? How does labor affect the revenue? All these points also impact your architecture when you think about your system running for the long time. Now, this was about the business skill. Let's talk about the last side of the triangle that Naumin just explained, which is soft skills. On soft skills, we would like you to think of 5 C's. The first C is player coach. In player coach, there are 3 elements. The first is learn. Solution architects start with learning the concepts that they need to advance their solution. How do they do that? They go through videos, blogs, tutorials, Git repos, or even reading the system configuration, because they want to learn in and out about the system. Like in medicine or law, in architecture world, there is a day-to-day practice of making your architecture work. But even more pronounced than doctors or lawyers, solution architects invest a lot of time in rigorous relearning the current trend, but also what's coming next. And of course, reInvent is a nice place to be to learn about what's coming next. So you are at the right place. So that was the learn part. Build. You all are builders. And in order to understand any technology, it is important that you get your hands into the depth of complexity. Any early career technologist here, I would highly encourage you to start building so that you can understand what is the complexity of any solution. You fail fast, you experiment, and you learn even faster. You not only build alone, you build with your product team, as I mentioned before. You become a partner of the build team, and you work together to understand how those builds work and convert them into designs and then patterns and run those POCs to ultimately make an important solution that your customer needs. And after that, teach. Now, what good is a treasure if it is just locked away and never shared? It's the teach part. Solution architects are great evangelists. The resources that you used in the learn part, you use the same resources for others. So you build those resources. You create blogs, you create videos, you create Git repos, and you create other resources to evangelize those things that you learn. At AWS, solution architects do the same thing. They run various immersion days, game days, or also do various workshops to teach others how to use those services and how to learn the new concepts. So this was all about the 3 elements of the coach. What are the other 4 C's?
So the next C, as part of the soft skills, is communication. Network architects, data architects, security architects. That's you up on the screen. Software engineers and developers, you too are up on the screen. DevOps engineers, QA engineers, auditors, management, you too are up on the screen. The solutions architect You're at the center of the circle. As a solutions architect, you need to be able to communicate to all the technologists in this circle why they should care, what they should care about, and how they're going to solve for the thing they care about. Now, why they should care is most likely going to be same for all these technologists. What they should care about is most likely going to be different for these technologists. And how they're going to solve for the thing that they care about is going to be most definitely different. So as a solutions architect, you need to tailor your communication to the recipient of that message. Product owners and business decision makers, you're sitting in that boardroom. Just like how the solution architect had to tailor its message and not repeat every single business decision to these technologists, a solution architect has to tailor its message back to the boardroom. They're not going to repeat every single technical constraint. They're not going to repeat every single technical decision. Instead, they're going to translate those into business capabilities and business risks so that product owners and the boardroom can make informed decision. Now, of course, we're at a tech conference, and this is an architecture track, so I must ask, what architectural pattern does this communication resemble? So hopefully fan out and fan in was going through your mind. So number 2 from the soft skills is communication. Number 3 is curiosity. We are all born with curiosity, but it takes practice. We have to develop our muscle to practice curiosity in a workplace. Vikas, you talked earlier about the 5 stages of working backwards. Every stage requires an immense amount of curiosity. Number 4 is courage. Courage will get you unstuck. Now, how many times in your career you have come across people, projects, and organizations who are unable to make a decision? Most likely those folks were not lacking information. In fact, they were lacking courage at the expense of being incorrect months, years, or even decades down the line. At Amazon, we have this phrase called, is it a one-way door or is it a two-way door? Most decisions in business can be reversed. So have the courage to walk through that door, knowing that you can walk back out if circumstances change. Speed matters in business. Courage matters for speed. And lastly, it's compassion. There is sympathy, there is empathy, and then there is compassion. Compassion is your desire to help and the act of helping in response to sympathy and empathy. As a solutions architect, you're going to be many things for many people. Have compassion and exercise compassion in all that you undertake as a solutions architect. All right, so to sum it up, the 3 sides of your equilateral triangle is technical skills in a form of breadth and depth. You need to have business skills. You need to know how your company makes money. You need to be able to effectively navigate your organizational structure, and you need to know corporate finance. And on the soft skills, be that player coach. Communicate effectively and efficiently, and exercise a great amount of curiosity, courage, and compassion. Now, this will not be reInvent. This will not be AWS if we did not leave you with tools to get started. So let's talk about the tools. We'll start with learning. The easiest way to get started with learning is going through AWS Skill Builder. There's over 600 free courses. Learn at your own pace, learn just in time, perhaps take a curated learning path. Now, what do you do after you learn? You reinforce that learning by getting certified. We saw a lot of hands raised earlier for aspiring solutions architects. Every aspiring solutions architect, go ahead and get certified with Solution Architect Associate certification. Now, once you do that, post it to LinkedIn and tag Vikas and I on that. If you've been doing this for a while, go ahead and get certified with Solution Architect Professional and do the same. Now, of course, if you have both, challenge yourself to a specialty certification, perhaps in machine learning, networking, or security. What do you do after you learn, Vikas?
We build. You all are builders. Do you know in our AWS solution library, we have more than 1,300 solutions ready, vetted, and waiting for you to deploy them. That's the best way of learning. These solutions have been used by thousands of customers, and I would encourage you to give it a go and deploy them, and tag me and Nomin on LinkedIn so that we learn about your success story. If you have your workloads running on AWS, we talked about making trade-offs and using the best practices. So go and learn about AWS Well-Architected tool and framework. Go to the online resources and find those trainings in our AWS Skill Builder portal. You can also reach out to our partners and your own AWS account teams to learn more about this framework. What do we do after build?
Of course, we teach. Because you said it earlier, what good is a treasure if it's locked away and never shared? So start teaching. The easiest way to get started with teaching is answering questions posed by your peers on AWS Repost. Now, as we all know, there is never a single answer to the question. So go ahead and provide that second, third, fourth, all the alternative answers to those questions. And then there are some who take their teaching to a new level. AWS Heroes is a vibrant worldwide community of AWS practitioners whose teaching has an outsized impact. Every superhero has an origin story. Perhaps this is yours. Go be a hero. So I mentioned earlier that I was a big food fanatic or a foodie, so it's really important to me that I read food reviews, restaurant reviews, and also write food reviews and restaurant reviews. So with that, Vikas and I would like to thank you for joining us today. So this is the one time we're going to ask you to take out your phones and please leave us feedback on how you liked this session. Vikas?
Thank you very much, everybody. Hope the session was useful. These are the LinkedIn QR code if you want to connect with us. We would love to connect with all of you. And as Nomin said, please provide us the feedback through the AWS Events app. And if you want to talk or you have any question, let's meet outside this room after this session. So thank you very much and have a great reInvent.
Have a great reInvent.